Good morning. My name is David Butler, and I'm a scholar in the Health and Medicine Division of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And I'm also a staffer on the project that we're going to be speaking about today. On behalf of Professor Joan Bennett, the chair of the National Academies Committee on Microbiomes of the Built Environment from Research to Application, I'd like to welcome everyone who's here in the room today and who is joining us via the webcast. As part of the Academy's process, I'd like to talk with you for just a moment to lay down a few of the ground rules for not only this, but all the workshops that are conducted by the National Academies. I'd like to start out by reminding everyone that this is an open, on-the-record information gathering session. The committee is in the process of collecting information and materials that we'll examine and discuss in the course of developing its findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Therefore, I'd like to ask everyone to be mindful of the fact that the committee has made no conclusions and that it would be a mistake for anyone to leave here today thinking otherwise. Comments made by individuals, including members of the committee, should not be interpreted as positions of the committee or of the National Academies. In addition, committee members typically ask penetrating questions that may or may not indicate their point of view during workshops such as this. The comments that any given committee member may have don't necessarily reflect the position that he or she may actually hold on the subject under discussion, and don't say anything about that person's future position as this study evolves. The committee will thoroughly deliberate as it's writing its draft report. Moreover, once that draft report is written, it must go through a rigorous peer review process before it is made an official report of the National Academies. We expect to release this report in 2017. With that, I'd like to introduce the chair of the committee, Professor Joan Bennett.
Thank you, David. Good morning. I want to repeat the welcome to members of the committee, the wonderful speakers we've been able to attract to join us, the recipients of the travel grant. Special thanks to the Moore Foundation for making it possible that so many young scientists can join us in person today, and to those of you who are on the webcast. In addition to giving the welcome, my job is to tell you a little bit about my own background and then to reiterate the charge to the committee. I'm trained in fungal genetics and spent most of my life studying fungal toxins that had importance in agriculture. I had over 3 decades in that field, blithely ignoring the indoor air except for the occasional opportunity to consult when people asked me whether mycotoxins were causing sick building syndrome. Many of you have heard my personal story. I had a conversion experience about mycotoxins and sick building experience, sick building illness in the form of a disaster. I used to live in New Orleans, and my home flooded after Hurricane Katrina. And I saw a lot of mold and other microbial life up close and on stuff that I loved, and I cleaned it up. And ever since then, in my new job at Rutgers, at a university that is firmly above sea level, I have been reinventing myself as a specialist on the indoor environment, particularly from the fungal angle. This committee and study is a wonderful opportunity to educate myself because I come at this with a rather narrow perspective. But my main job now is to reiterate the charge to the committee. We are a study that's funded by all 3 academies, the sciences, engineering, and the Institute of Medicine is now a National Academy of Medicine, so the 3 academies. And we're charged to look at what's going on inside of buildings and other built structures. There are three parts to our charge, and the first one is to figure out what we already know. We know a lot. People have been living in buildings for millennia, and in the time that science came along, we've had a lot of opportunity to study the effects of these buildings on our well-being, our comfort, and our health. The reason this committee is being charged now has to do with the fact that microbiologists have had some technical breakthroughs in our ability to assess what's there. For most of the decades microbiologists looked at the built environment, we were doing so from the perspective of what we could grow. Using DNA-based technology, we find what's dead and what's alive. We can't always distinguish what's dead and what's alive. And like all microbiome studies, we're finding there's a lot more microbial life than we expected, and a lot more diversity in that microbial life. And it's a challenge because much of this diversity we're still not able to grow. And so we're not always sure what it is that we're finding. We not only have to document what's out there, but we have to figure out how it's relating to the quality of these built structures we live in. And where our knowledge is adequate, our job is to try to summarize what the implications are for building managers and for future structures and for architects, and as we move forward into the future and more people come to share our very limited space on this planet and try to make our structures as healthful as possible. There are real opportunities and challenges as we try to come up with practical applications of what our new insights about microbial life are going to mean. And we know we want to support sustainability and human health. We don't always know exactly how this information is going to do so. And then finally, and from my perspective, this is our most important charge, we're asked to prioritize where the big gaps are and figure out what needs to be done so that funding agencies in the future, scientists who are just starting their career and want to carve a space in this enormous study area for themselves, should be spending their time. And this is another area with a lot of question marks. We don't always know what is more important than the other. We can't measure everything. And in our earlier meetings, I'd say one of our big challenges as a committee has been, we'll have a presentation on one thing, and then somebody says, well, what about that? What about the other? And what about the third? And we really have a big priority setting challenge. And I think that we have enough brain power in this room that collectively we will be able to overcome it. We know that our report is not going to be able to be a perfect set of recommendations. No human endeavor ever is. But I think we're going to be able to bring a lot of focus to what's an exciting and very large and complex field. So welcome, everyone. I think we're in for a very interesting day, and I look forward to getting to talk with many of you individually. Okay, David, is it my job to introduce our first panel? We have as our first session titled How the Built Environment Microbiome Responds to Context and Perturbations, and it will be chaired by Robert Holt from the University of Florida, who's one of our hardworking committee members. Please come to the podium.